stumbling upon Monet's Water Lilies, a gap year adventure. After completing my undergraduate studies in 1994 and before embarking on my graduate education at Southern Illinois University Carbondale in 1995, I experienced what many refer to as a gap year. During this time, I relocated to Milwaukee, where I lived in a small apartment situated approximately a mile and a half from my current residence. I juggled 2 jobs, dedicated a significant amount of time to exercising, and focused on enhancing my language skills while delving into the study of philosophy. Additionally, I applied to various graduate programs and, perhaps most importantly, I made it a priority to save a substantial portion of my earnings each month. Every month, I would visit a large bank where I held an account to exchange my savings into different European currencies. This was part of my plan to accumulate enough funds to travel to Europe. After vacating my apartment and settling my lease, I also took a trip to Quebec. Once I received my acceptance into graduate school, I intended to spend about 6 weeks exploring Europe using a special travel option known as a U-Rail pass. This pass allowed me to travel by train across various countries for a flat fee, although I learned that accommodations like sleeping compartments would require additional payment. I had a network of friends and acquaintances, including an old college girlfriend, scattered across France, Germany, and Switzerland, which meant I had affordable places to stay during my travels. For the nights I needed accommodations, I primarily relied on youth hostels. One memorable encounter occurred on a train in Paris, where I struck up a conversation with a stranger. He graciously invited me to stay at his lovely apartment for a couple of days, allowing me the freedom to explore the city at my own pace. My journey began with a flight into Frankfurt, from where I ventured to various regions in Germany, made my way to the Czech Republic, and then traveled through Switzerland before arriving in France. By the time I reached Paris, it was August, a month when the city is typically bustling with tourists. Many locals tend to leave Paris during the summer to escape the influx of visitors, seeking relaxation in other parts of France. Consequently, the atmosphere in the city was lively but distinctly different from the quieter, more local vibe it would have in the fall. I spent around 4 to 5 days in Paris, armed with a map of the Paris metro system. However, I found the map less helpful than I had hoped. Often, I would set out with the intention of visiting a specific location, only to find myself confused and ending up somewhere entirely different after navigating the metro. In my travels across Europe, I had planned a day spent exploring Paris. However, after being bombarded by an attack on the Paris metro, I found myself lost and unsure where to go. I then remembered I was a walker, so I decided to walk around the city, feeling warm at first but quite hot. I was used to this weather, and so for me, this was an unforgettable adventure. Now, I want to focus on the part of the grand adventure I wanted to explore. In this story, it's likely the 3rd or 4th day I stayed there. Originally, I had hoped to visit the Louvre Museum, but unfortunately, there was a bombing in Paris before that time. When I arrived, I saw a line of Japanese tourists waiting for their stuff to be searched. I felt frustrated and decided to take a break from walking. Instead, I rode the metro and eventually walked for a mile or more until I met a place that looked like a museum. It was originally designed to bring oranges in during winter, as the cold and snow made them vulnerable. I didn't know what it was, but I saw something resembling a museum. I then went in and found out that the name was Muse or Musée. This was once intended to show orange trees but wasn't fully realized. I saw a man there, and I don't remember exactly how much it cost. At the time, I had French francs, German marbles, Swiss francs, and even some American dollars. I think I had traveler's checks too, which helped with exchanging money. The total amount I paid was between 10 and 15 francs. At that time, the equivalent of $3 could fit in my wallet. I went inside and found it to be an art museum. It was one of my favorite types of impressionist art, and I remember when I was in college, I worked with the art department. Over the years, I've always been interested in art and have always gravitated toward impressionist art because I love its use of color and emotion. Do you know how certain lighting effects can transform the way we perceive artwork? I have a special place in my heart for the Milwaukee Art Museum, a place I frequented often during my time living in the area. As a member, I would explore its galleries regularly, especially the downstairs sections. One day, I stumbled upon a delightful surprise that was a true treat for me as an admirer of Impressionism. Claude Monet, in particular, has always been a favorite of mine, especially his water lilies. In art books, these masterpieces appear as rectangular prints that one can hang on their walls. However, my understanding was limited until I saw the actual water lilies at the Musée de l'Orangerie in Paris. The water lilies were not just paintings, they were murals, adorning the circular walls of the orangery. Walking into these rooms was an immersive experience, allowing me to stand in the center and be surrounded by Monet's work. I lost track of time, completely absorbed in the beauty of the paintings. At the time, I was in my early 20s, with my hair dyed auburn and shaved on the sides, wearing a casual outfit. I must have looked quite the sight, wandering around in silence, taking it all in. The experience was one of my favorite moments with art, and I've always wanted to return. Now, many years later, I've learned more about Monet's work, especially how the water lilies are long, rectangular compositions. Visiting the Musée de l'Orangerie's website doesn't quite replicate the experience of being there. If I ever return to Paris, I would love to revisit the orangery with my family and share this awe-inspiring experience with them. I once had the pleasure of working with a client who also turned out to be a generous benefactor. Back in 2018, I attended an event in London called Stoicon, where I was scheduled to present. Although he was unable to attend, he had arranged for his mother and secretary to join us. They organized a delightful day trip to Paris for all of us, which turned out to be quite an adventure filled with fascinating experiences. During our whirlwind tour, we visited the Louvre and spent some time outside the orangery. Unfortunately, we couldn't go inside because it was nearing the end of the day, and we had to catch a train back through the Channel, which runs beneath the English Channel, to return to London. Nevertheless, the beauty of Paris was breathtaking, and I was particularly struck by Monet's series of water lily paintings. Reflecting on that day, I remember not just the sights I encountered but also the emotions I felt. It was a moment of pure joy, as I was witnessing something I had only read about before. The reality of those masterpieces far exceeded the images and descriptions I had encountered previously. Looking back, I realized that this experience was truly special, and I might never have the opportunity to revisit those moments. If fate allows me to return, I will certainly take the time to immerse myself in the beauty of those incredible paintings that Claude Monet has gifted to the world. This story is a cherished memory of an afternoon filled with enjoyment, learning, and the expansion of my horizons. While I may not consider myself an expert in art or literature, I do have a fond appreciation for Monet, and I was fortunate enough to see those water lilies at the Musée de l'Orangerie. That's my story, and I hope it resonates with you.